We were having such a nice time, James, nattering away to
I
our
know.
guest that I suddenly realised, oh my goodness, I've got 1 second to find the video and press the button and get organised. I was a bit distracted.
Time flies when you're having fun. How are you this week, Maria?
I am fine, thank you very much indeed. I had a photo shoot on Monday, James.
Oh,
Terrible, terrible. I
was
mean,
it?
it wasn't. The photographer's lovely, but I hate being photographed. I don't know. Do you
So
like being
what
photographed?
what is it? You don't like taking direction, or you just don't like
I
seeing
don't like
yourself on photos?
smiling. The photographer said to me, Maria, could you look a bit more welcoming? Look as if you're happy for me to be here. And I said, I can't do that. I can't do that. It's not comfortable. And you're sort of in these various positions where you're perched on the edge of a chair and you're leaning forward and you mustn't
Yeah.
move this and you've got to. Anyway,
I'm
never
sure they're going
mind.
to look absolutely fabulous. And welcome, everyone. If you're joining us here for the first time, this is Speaking Business TV. My name's James Taylor, keynote speaker on creativity, innovation, and artificial intelligence.
And my name is Maria Franzoni, a recovering speaker bureau owner and reluctant photography subject, shall we say.
Now, today we are this is your sweet spot, I think, your sales. This is what we're going to be covering today,
Love it.
Maria, aren't we?
I love talking about sales. Everything begins with a sale.
Yes. Yes. And it's a bit, I know that a lot of speakers really, really struggle on. A lot of them get very into the marketing, very into creating their content. Sales is the thing that troubles many of them as well. So our guest today is a conversation strategist and author of 5 books, and who works with organizations and leaders to ask better questions and get better results. His first book, Coffee for Closers, was #1 best-selling book for telesales on Amazon. He brings actionable, practical, real-life techniques that can be implemented now and get instant results. We all want that. Welcome, Tony Morris.
Hello,
Thank you so much,
Tony.
James. Hi,
Hello,
guys.
Tony.
Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. So actually, I'm going to correct James because he said conversation specialist, but it's actually conversion
Thank
Conversion.
specialist.
you.
Yes, conversion. So tell us what is that? And obviously this must be your area of expertise. Expand on what that means for us, please.
Absolutely. So, conversion strategist is every element of the sales cycle, the sales process. I look to make marginal gains, little tweaks to improve that conversion rate. So, that could be for an organization when they get a inquiry, how they turn that inquiry into an appointment, how they turn that appointment into a potential face-to-face appointment, and how they turn that meeting into business. And then the final piece of the jigsaw is how they turn that customer into what I would call a raving fan. So they become like your referral magnet. And all of those elements need to be fine-tuned so you are converting at the highest level. And that's where I add most value.
I love that. I think that's really good. That is so important. And I totally get that. Having been in sales most of my life, I completely get that. Love it. So is that what you talk about when you're invited in to speak at events?
Yeah, it's one of the things. So I've been in sales for 22 years, I worked across 60 industries, believe it or not, with my training company. So I've actually designed and created numerous tools, but I guess my 3 or 4 most popular is what I've understood about sales is if you ask more intelligent questions, which provokes conversation, creates engagement, often it will lead to better conversations, and better conversations normally would lead to better results. So my most popular talk is Ask Better Questions, Get Better Results. It's actually the 6th book that I'm halfway through writing at the moment. But I wrote a talk called Do You Believe in the Tooth Fairy? And it was about something that happened to my family that was mind blowing in terms of service. And I'm writing a book as well. I'm writing 2 books at once, which is a bit strange, but that's
It's a
how I work.
shame.
Uh, yeah, and that book's Memorable Service, the good, the bad, the ugly, where I talk about what memorable service actually is. And I guess my final most popular talk, and I wrote this during the pandemic, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, is about mental health. I know it's very topical right now, and I realised during the pandemic that my anxiety levels got worse, like I'm sure so many people did, and I sought help. I saw a doctor, I saw a psychiatrist, and it transpired after a 2-hour diagnosis that I actually have bipolar. And it's something the psychiatrist believes I've had for probably 25 years. I was unaware of it, and I was dealing with it and managing it my own way. And on the back of that, I managed to articulate these strategies that I've personally used to handle it effectively. And my talk is called The Two Tonys: Speak Up About Mental Health in Business. And the speak up is the system, the methodology that I now talk about.
Wow, that's
So
amazing, isn't it?
Maybe I'd like to maybe come back to the mental health thing, because I think that's it doesn't just affect salespeople, everyone, but also I think for a lot of speakers, there's always that voice that's kind of going on if you're having to sell your speaking program. So and there's rejection, there's a lot of things kind of comes into that. So maybe we can come back to that in a moment. But I'm going to be the cold hard person here and say, okay, Tony, you say you're an authority on sales. What actually makes you have that claim? What makes you have that authority on sales? And then I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to ask you, okay, I've got my sales funnel. Where should I start? Should I start early in the funnel, those first inquiries that start to come in, get them how to improve that part of the process, the 1% gains there? Or should I be going right to the other end, that last part of the sales funnel, just before hopefully they convert, make that sale, or maybe make that referral? Is that what I should be focusing on? So what makes you authority, and what part of the sales funnel should we be looking at first?
Great question. So let me ask the authority first. So I started sales actually at the age of 13 at school. A friend of mine used to get free vouchers to a tuck shop. And I said to him, look, can I have some? I'd like to increase my pocket money. So I started selling sweets to my friends. And I realized I had a knack early on the power of influence and persuasion. I didn't know why. I didn't know really what I did to codify that, but I had this ability. And I then put it into practice in terms of work. I started my career 23 years ago in a call center selling utilities, 85 people in the call center. And within the first month, I became the top salesperson. And I held that title, that accolade, for 6 consecutive months while I worked there. And it was then that I started to understand what I did differently to others. Why was I top performer consecutively and consistently? And I think it came down to the questions I asked, my listening ability, my attitude, and my tenacity, and a few other characteristics. I realized B2C call center wasn't my career path. So I got into B2B, selling IT software solutions. And again, very quickly, I became their top salesperson. Up to the point I joined, the largest deal that was ever generated was £45,000. Within 9 months, I landed a £250,000 deal, and the following month, a 230k deal. And I think, the team around me were quite amazed, I guess. But I followed a process, a structure that I guess slightly self-taught, but I've also invested a lot of money and time in training for me. So it's things that I read and I learned along the journey. And since that point, I've been very fortunate now to work with over 36,000 sales professionals across 60 different industries all over the world. And I think, having written 5 books and now my next 2, I guess that gives me that authority piece. I'm gonna talk and move at the same time, if I may, because I'm just being kicked out of my room.
Kicked out.
While you're doing that,
We'll
Maria,
fill.
Maria, I'm interested from your side. So you've been in sales for a long time, selling speakers. When you go in, you start working, and you maybe start advising a speaker on selling their, or even I know you work with actually other bureaus. You advise other bureau agents as well. What part of the sales funnel are you normally helping them with? Is it more on the research, the prospecting side, or more on once they're kind of losing a lot of things at the last minute in the final parts of the deal?
You know what? And I imagine that Tony's going to agree with me. You can't just look at one part of the process. You've got to actually look at the entire process. You can't just take one piece. So it's like, I suppose, if you're having, I don't know, say, imagine you're having your teeth done. It's no good just doing these front two. You've got to do the whole lot, right? So I've got to look at the entire process, and there will be, and Tony will agree, I'm sure, there will be leaks. I nicked Jamil's term of leaky bucket. There'll be a leaky bucket all the way through where you're losing things. But I'll tell you what I've noticed, and I wonder if this is the same for you, Tony. I think most people don't leverage their existing contacts and their existing clients as much as they should. People who already know them, already have had a good experience, they don't do enough with them. They're constantly looking to add new and new and new. And I know that's a problem I've seen in many bureaus, where they're constantly trying to do, you know, the Google ads or whatever to attract new people, when actually they've got an amazing rich database that is easier to work with than starting again with somebody new, I think. Do you agree?
100%, and it's actually been proven. There was a claim made by the ISM, the Institute of Sales and Marketing, that said it's 8 times harder to win a new customer than to sell to your existing client base, because, as you said, Maria, trust has been built. They trust, they like you, they know you, that they've seen that you've added value to their business in whatever area. So it's very easy to then look to cross-sell or upsell. And something that I teach my clients is, and this only works if you work with numerous customers, and that could be 20 plus, and also if you've got more than one product or service offering. But if you can imagine a chessboard, down the left column I have a list of all my clients, and on the top column, right across the top, I've got the different services I offer. So as an example, my first client was a car leasing company many years ago, and I did sales training to them. But I realized that the sales team were really performing well. Their conversions were really high. They were exceptional. Where they were poor was retention and good leadership. So I helped them with customer services training, and their retention rate went up and referrals went up. And then we looked at some sales leadership to help their managers maximize their team's efforts. So with this chessboard, I had an asterisk by customer and sales training, but then I looked at, I need to talk to them about these 2 other services that I know will add value and benefit. So it's quite a nice way very quickly to look at your client bank and where else can you add value. So I totally agree. Going back to James's question, he asked me, where does he start? Is it the beginning? Is it the end? And Maria said this, it's every single step. And where sales has changed dramatically is, if we look at 10, 12 years ago, that when you first engaged with a prospective customer, they may have done 5-10% of research. So at the beginning, it's a real educational piece. Now it's claimed that when prospects first speak to you, they're 58% into their decision-making process already. They are so well researched. They've read your reviews. They may have spoken to clients without you even knowing about it. They've seen your social footprint. That they're much further down the process. So when you have that phone call with them, the initial inquiry, they're already down the journey. So we've got to wow them from then right up to the point where they become a raving fan. And I say to my clients, that initial inquiry is normally done so badly. Most people who take that first role, I call them a customer prevention officer. That it's so often they'll say, "Oh, send us an email and we'll get back to you at some point," or "the person you need isn't available now, give them a ring back later." But I see this day in, day out. Whereas the person who does it really well and takes pride in this position is what I call the CEO of the first impression. And if they can wow that prospect from the first interaction, the probability of them becoming a raving fan goes up. And as long as you exceed expectation through every single step of the process, your probability is always going up to where they then eventually become a customer and then a raving fan.
Totally agree with you, by the way. Totally agree with you. Sorry, James.
No, I'm just kind of reflecting on that, and I remember it was I think it was, I'm gonna say Phil M. Jones was the first person that kind of really got me into doing this. He's a great British speaker, lives in the States now. And we would receive inquiries, email inquiries, forms on the website all the time. And first of all, we'd normally start by doing an email response. If we actually had a thing that they could automatically schedule a call, but if it didn't do that, we would email back, hey, when can we get a call? And Phil said, just get into the thing of just picking up the phone and just calling them straight away. And it was really interesting because people don't expect that anymore. Maybe it's, I don't know, it's a generational thing, but as soon as the inquiry would come in, we actually had a target to call within that hour. And so I would actually pick up whether they were in the United Arab Emirates, in Denver, in Paris, wherever it was. And I would just pick up the phone and have that first call. And there was always that little kind of, oh, I wasn't supposed to. Now, Maria is going to tell me, James, you shouldn't be doing these calls.
No, I'm not going to tell you that at all. I'm not going to tell you that at all.
Okay,
see, you don't really know me that well.
But it's like a little kind of pattern interrupt at the start. And then I just found that it was much easier to, I think of them as almost like triage calls, where it's a very quick, I'm not selling on the call at all. I'm just basically seeing, do they have budget? Is it going to be a potential fit? And then I'll then schedule a proper call where I'll do all the fancy stuff.
Absolutely.
But, so that those and that was something I'm going to give credit to Phil M. Jones for that. He was the first person that told me that. He said, switch up your modality. If you're getting an inquiry in by email, jump on that phone call with them.
We did that.
And on that, I know Phil well. I'm a massive fan. I love his book, Exactly What to Say. He's exceptional with language. One question I recommend to all my clients, because when we get that inquiry, I agree, we should always pick up the phone if we can, if there's a number available, or if we can find a number. But a lot of prospects, or a lot of my clients, shall I say, will often ask at the beginning of the call, can I ask you, how did you hear about us? Now, it's a good question in terms of it gets the source of the inquiry, if the company remembers how they heard about you. But a better question is, can I just ask, who recommended you to my company?
Yeah.
And I like that, because it still gets the source of an inquiry, but it gives that great perception that you've been recommended. And if the prospect says, well, I found you on Google or Facebook or whatever, you say, great. The only reason I ask is most of our business is recommended. So you plant the seed early.
Nice. He's good.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
that's great.
I've got a question for you, actually, because you mentioned Phil, and I know Phil had a strategy. He had a really focused strategy when he went to work in the States, for example. Now, do you, because you're a clever salesperson, did you decide, I'm going to focus on certain industries? Because, of course, every industry has a sales team. Or did you say, I'm going to focus and go deep in certain industries? And I'm hoping you're going to say, yes, you did. You focused and went deep. Otherwise, I'm going to hide under the desk.
I absolutely did. And you know why? Because it's so hard, isn't it? Everyone is in sales. Everyone. You said it earlier, Maria, right at the beginning of this. So when people said to me, who do you work with? I said the dreaded everyone. And then what happens is no one can really refer you, because who's everyone? So I thought about, where do I add most value? And what I did actually was a really clever exercise someone taught me. It was a gentleman, Australian billionaire called Brad Sugars, who owns Action Coach, the biggest coaching franchise in the world. And he said, grade your customers. And he said, grade them from A to D. So when you've got to a point where maybe you've got 50, 100 clients, now grade them to know where your sweet spot is. And I went through that journey. At the time, I had about 150 clients. I was probably 4 years into my business when I worked with everybody. And I graded them. A, are your most profitable clients, or the ones you love to work with? Ideally, both. Your B is your bread and butter, the regular clients. Your C is your one-off clients. You want to work with them, but you're not going to get a lot of repeats. And your D are your dead clients. These are ones that pay you the least, but give you the biggest headache. And we've all got those. So when I graded my clients, I realized that the niches my grade A's were, and they fell into 4 specific industries. The biggest was real estate. And it's where I added most value. So based on that, I then started to be very specific with my targeting, with my social media content, that I spoke their language. I gave examples of how I helped them solve their biggest problems. And that's when I really niched. But I chose, just the final point on that, I didn't want to become known as the real estate guru, because then I'm closing business to the other 3 niches that I work. So I think it's okay to have 3, 4, maybe even 5 niches, as long as it's not everybody.
Very good. Love it. Adam Levitt says this is a really interesting conversation and great content, which is quite handy because he's a speaker bureau owner. So that's quite good that he's enjoying
Absolutely.
this. Hello, Adam.
Good to hear, Adam. Thank
so
you.
One of the other things that I noticed you've done on your website is, as well as the kind of coaching, the individual work that you do with companies and speaking, you've also created these online products, online memberships, online courses through your universities. So I'm sure a lot of speakers that are listening or watching this just now, they're speakers, they're kind of trading time for money. They want to create some more passive forms of income, or slightly more passive, nothing's completely passive. But tell us about that journey, because I know we use the same platform. We both use Kajabi to host our online academies on. When did you start doing that? What was your key learnings? What advice would you give to anyone that's thinking about taking their knowledge and putting it in that format?
Absolutely. So it's something I've always wanted to do. I'll be honest, I didn't know how to go about it, and B, didn't have time, or the excuse I gave myself was I didn't have time. And I think one of the benefits for me of the pandemic is it gave me time back. So rather than be traveling 2 or 3 countries a month to deliver talks at conferences, although I missed that, I now had all of that time available at my fingertips. So what I did is I looked at, what do I actually teach? What's my methodology? And I think that's something very important that I've learned, especially as a speaker, is you need to have, I believe, a system, a structure, a program that you teach. So one of my sales methodologies is called the Ask Philosophy Principles, and it stands for attract, solve, and keep. So I teach clients how to attract the right leads, how to solve their problems so they become a customer, and how to keep them so they become a raving fan. And what I did, actually, it's a funny quick story. I got, when you get flashed on a camera and you got a choice to either get points or go and have a speeding course. So a course, and I'll be honest, it was the second time I went on it. It was pretty painful the first time, but second time was even worse. And I thought, how can I use these 5 hours effectively? And I sat there for 5 hours coming up with my e-learning product. I looked at my Ask Philosophy Principles and I labeled out 30 different modules. And as I did it, so as an example, module 1's called Mindset. I thought, what content do I know about mindset? And there was about 16 different topics of mindset, and I broke those down into bite-sized videos. So in those 5 hours, I actually mapped out my entire TMI Sales University. And what was funny, the chap next to me said, Jesus Christ, I've never seen anyone take more notes at one of these things. I've actually just built an entire e-learning product, and he just thought I was a bit weird, to be honest with you.
But you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be. This is on the record. You're in trouble. You're in trouble.
It's true. Well, I did the course. Do you know what I mean? I've not been flashed since, so but I learned. But the point I make is, once the hard bit was, well, I say the hard bit is really knowing, what do you teach? Where do you give most value? Create an agenda, a content, and then it was a case of just putting together the content. So I invested about £1,200 in a good camera, good lighting, good mic. And I went into my mum's spare bedroom and set up a little studio for myself and recorded everything. The challenging part was the workbooks and the tests. That took me the longest out of everything. So the workbook, I had to really, once I put all the videos together, I had to think, right, how do I make a usable workbook for my delegate? That took a while. The test took forever, because again, I had to go through every single video and come up with 3 answers, because I did multiple choice, 3 answers to every question. So that took a long time. My biggest lesson from all of it was, make sure you've really done research on the right platform first. So the first thing I did is I created a WordPress, like a website. I wasted a couple of grand, and it was a nightmare. I then got someone on, the app Fiverr. Yes. I found someone on Fiverr to build it. Another waste of £1,000. So, and then everyone said to me, use Kajabi. It's trusted, it's great. So I actually trialed Kajabi versus Thinkific, and I made a choice on those, and I went with Kajabi. And since I did, it's been amazing. And in 1 year, I've now built 2 universities, one for estate agents called EA University. It generated £120,000 in my first year, which finished in December, and TMI University, which generated £70,000 in its first year. And from a standing start, I think that's okay.
That's fantastic. One of the things then, so you mentioned about choosing your industries. And this is a thing I find a lot of speakers, when they start their online academies, it takes them a while to find that product market fit, and that is who is going to buy this. So
absolutely,
a lot of those sites on Kajabi you see, or universities, they're very B2C. Yes. And there's nothing wrong. And I'm a big fan of B2C, but that's a certain way of selling, and there's a certain pricing, and there's a certain way of doing things there. And then there's kind of B2B where you're not really selling on the website, but you're selling somewhere else, and then you're basically giving access to 100 tickets, 100 spaces on that online. Yours sounds like it's kind of in the middle, because these individual people that are putting down their credit card, or is their company paying for their place?
So it's really interesting. I've just changed it. So I decided to choose 2 industries that I serve that had numerous people. I thought it was an obvious place to start. Go for a big audience where I've add value. And estate agents was the first obvious one. They've got 26,000 in the UK. 26,000 independent estate agents in the UK, and I work with 300 of them. So I thought, what an opportunity. So to begin with, I did a per person pricing model, and it was very simple. It was £97 per person per month, and I didn't put them into a contract. What I then started to understand was there were different roles within estate agents. You could be what's called a negotiator, dealing with a buyer or a seller, or you could be what's called a valuer, where you go out and value someone's property. And I realized that I can't have the same content for both of them. It's something that will be irrelevant for one person. So I actually looked at all of my content, which was 380 videos, and broke it down into 6 different job titles. So now a negotiator does a different topic to a valuer, a different journey. And the other thing I decided to do is it became almost unaffordable, because a company with 200 staff, it's extortionate for them. So what I looked at now is I launched this last month. I now do £97 per branch. So if an agent's got 10 branches, they pay £1,000 a month to all of their staff. So that's how I've now done, and now I tie them into a 12-month contract. So there's a commitment there, and they're very happy with that. But they pay monthly. But what I've also done through my research is I wanted to build a community. I didn't just want to give access to content. So we actually have 2 1-hour virtual meetups a month where the community join me, and there's 3 things I do in those. One is a live Q&A with me. The second thing is I get a guest speaker every couple of sessions. Every 3 months we'll get a guest expert who adds value to that industry. And what I've just started doing, and this is my superpower, if you will, is I make live sales calls to their database.
Oh, that sounds fun.
They give me leads up front, and I've got to say, I did this yesterday. 1 hour on the phone to an estate agent in Exeter called Weber's, biggest estate agent in Exeter, and in 1 hour I booked 14 valuations, 3 mortgage appointments, and I got 2 conveyancing leads in 1 hour. And the managing director said to me, that's what we normally get in a week with 6 people. So what it sort of proved is, if the techniques are done the right way, and it's not rocket science what I teach, but if you ask the right questions, you make the right statements, you use the right language, you get a better result. And that's what I teach every month to my community as part of that investment.
So Maria, is this inspired you? Because I know you're running an event, I think next week, which is all about
Practical prospecting day. Yeah. So I mean, I've covered some of the content with Tony. Actually, we exchanged some expertise, because what's interesting is that when you go into an industry and you know it very specifically, you adapt your approach slightly. So Tony has great expertise because in estate agency and the other niches, the other industries he works in, and I've got expertise in the speaking business. So we actually we exchanged, didn't we, some expertise, because you're thinking,
100%.
how can you teach Tony anything about selling in this industry, in selling himself as a speaker? I was able to give him a little bit of help because I know the industry that much. Yeah. So thank you for that. So listen, I am dying to share some of your questions, because our title is Get Instant Results by Asking Better Questions. You've shared a couple of questions. We're going to have to share some more, because there'll be people hanging on with their pens. I'm ready with my pen. Share some really brilliant questions we should be asking. And in fact, you did this with us before. This is why we were almost late.
Absolutely. So if I share a bad example and then how I would tweak it. So often a salesperson or a speaker would say, can I just ask, I know you're the MD, I take it you're the decision maker. And the MD would go, absolutely. And then you invest time doing research, you meet with them, and it turns out they are the decision maker, but alongside the FD and the COO. So the right question to ask, because he or she's answering the question, but it's the wrong question. The right one is, aside from you, who else needs to be involved in this decision? That's when the MD would say, my FD and my COO. You get their names, and then you do what's called a justification statement. I would say, I need to meet all three of you. And the reason being is I find often you'll have very different questions, and I want to answer those so together you can make an informed decision. Because if I try and sell to that individual, it's patronizing, and he or she will feel I'm going above his head. So if I justify why, in terms of helping you make an informed decision, they feel more relaxed about it. So that's probably my first. My second one is, I'll give you two or three more. So let's say you're coming up against two competitors, and it's coming down to price, or so the prospect says. And they go, you're a little bit more expensive than the other two, which might be the case. My question would be this: can I ask you, if all of us were priced exactly the same, who would you choose? Now, often it will be you, because otherwise they wouldn't raise the objection, right? And when they say, well, I would choose you if the prices were all identical, the killer question is, I'm really pleased to hear that. And why would you choose me? And whatever comes out their mouth is the reason they favor you over everybody else. And then you say, do you now understand why I command a different fee?
That's good.
There's no one who can sell it better than themselves, to sell the concept to themselves. When you're in a sort of a beauty parade, let's say you're up against two or three companies, one killer question that so many people don't ask is, may I ask, what is the most important three factors to you when making this decision? Get the three out of them. And what's funny is when you ask for a number, they will give you three, even if they've only got two in their mind. So they'll give you three and say, and if you could only have one of those, which one would you have? So I now know which of the three is most important. And my final one is, and I got this idea because I used to say to my decision makers are normally sales directors and MDs. And I used to say to the two or three people, if you took me on board for training, what is the number one objective you want to achieve? And 95% of people said more sales. And I thought, that can't be right, because not everyone would have the same objective. So I blamed myself, and I thought, I'm asking the wrong question. Now what I ask is this. I say, let's fast forward 6 months from today. How do you know working with me has been a success? And when I did what's called a future-based question, I got totally different answers. They said our conversion rate has doubled. Our team's has gone through the roof. Our customer attrition rate has reduced by 10%. Our bottom line has gone up by 5%. The different motive came out. And the reason for that is that question is so much more thought-provoking and engaging. It gets them to think differently. And that's why, again, asking the better questions. And I guess my final example is I'll use estate agents, because this is a great example. Every call I listen to when they're qualifying a buyer, they'll say, have you been looking long? And the buyer will go, yeah, weeks. And have you seen anything you like? No, which is why I'm talking to you. It's a crap question.
Yeah.
So I put those two together to, can I ask you, Mr. Buyer, what's the best property you've seen so far? And it cuts out the noise, because I don't care that they've been looking for a month, and I don't care they've seen 10 they don't like. I want to know what the best they've seen. And then I want to know what attracted them to that best. And then when they give me a list of what they like, I would say, which of those things would you not compromise on? And now I've got such a good picture of what they want just by asking 2 or 3 better questions.
These are
I
fantastic.
love that. Paul
This is-
Sloaner
this is-
said, sorry, James, I just want to say, Paul Sloaner
Yeah.
said, this guy is good. Tony, I agree.
Oh, thanks, Paul.
This is
Thank
going to be
you.
a great episode also for people to listen back to, along with Mary's episodes, which was about asking questions as it relates to how would you best describe that episode?
Well, she calls it scoping. That's Mary Tilson, and she calls it scoping when you've actually got the brief and you're trying to scope and really understand what success looks like, I suppose. She goes really deep, looking at the risks to avoid and the what they want to achieve and sort of all of those understandings. So yeah, she's got some fabulous questions. Yeah, the two together, absolutely killer.
Fantastic. So Tony, I'm sure people want to go and now check out, learn a little bit more about you after hearing these great kind of ideas, these great tips you've been sharing, these questions. Where's the best place for them to go and do that?
Oh, thank you, James. So I have sort of 4 facets to my business, but the website TonyMorrisInternational.com is sort of my arching website that has the 4 different brands to my business, which is my training company, which is called ROI. But you'll get all of this under Tony Morris International. Tony Talks, which is my speaking business, and then TMI University, my e-learning, and finally I've just launched another facet called Atomic Hub, which is consultancy to estate agents. But overall, TonyMorrisInternational.com will take you there to those 4 different, I guess, business streams.
And of your books, if someone was to go and get a book, which was the one you suggested they pick up if they want to kind of get further into this area of sales?
If they want to get better at sales, definitely my first, Coffees for Closers. But the others they're all a different element. So Perfect Sales Call is if you are, I hate the word cold calling, but if you're doing what I call value calling, then the Perfect Sales Call. If you want to convert meetings better, the Perfect Sales Meeting. So it really depends what you want. But as a general sales to hone your skills and do the basics brilliantly, I would say it's Coffees for Closers.
Fantastic.
And you're giving that away for free, aren't you, as an ebook?
I am
And we've
giving
got the
away,
link.
Absolutely, with the absolute delight and pleasure to give that away as a gift.
Well,
Super.
that's
And
what we'll do is
website,
we'll add that to, if people go to speakingbusiness.tv, you might have to just give us a moment while we go and place the link, because this is hot off the press. We've just decided this. Tony was very kindly offered to give us this. But if you go to speakingbusiness.tv, enter your email address there, it will take you to the resources page of this episode and all the previous episodes that we've done as well. And I'll make sure that we add that link there so you can get a copy of Coffee for Closers. Wow, fantastic. Tony, thank you so much for being a guest on today's show.
My absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope your audience have taken some things away that they can put into practice.
Thank you, Tony. That was fabulous. I'm going to remove you to the green room. We're going to have a little bit of a debrief.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Enjoy it.
Wowzers. Hang on a minute. You're bigger than me. I don't like it when you do that. Wowzers. How good was that?
That was fantastic. Really actionable things. Anyone, it doesn't have to be you don't have to be in speaking industry for this. Any of those things you could pick up and you can start kind of applying as well. I love them. What were some of your favorite kind of highlights, or what were some of your reflections on that conversation with Tony?
Well, I mean, what's lovely is because my background, I consider myself a salesperson too. And I started, it's interesting because Tony said he was 13. I was 14. I had my first Saturday job at 14 and I was selling in a jeans shop, and I was beating all the full-time salespeople, doing more on a Saturday than they were doing all week. And I think it's quite interesting. I think you either have that personality or you don't.
Yeah.
But what I loved his Excel spreadsheet idea of the clients down the side and the products across. I think that's very clever. So, I mean, we do something similar on our CRM, but that's very visual for you to see it. But also it encourages you to have more products and to have a customer journey and a process, which I think is really good. And the other thing that resonated with me is we graded our customers when we ran the bureau, and I liked his grading system. I think it was very simple, you know, that your A is your most profitable. And I think it's really important to know who your most profitable clients are. Absolutely. We do in this new business too, who your bread and butter regular clients are, your one-offs and the dead. I thought that's really nice, simple structure. I like that. Do you grade your clients, by the way, James?
We have a certain type of, not on the speaking side, but on the online kind of learning side, we have a kind of a grading version, a point scoring version for that. It's normally we use the grading before we sell, before they make the purchase.
Right, yeah.
So it's basically grading on if they've been looking at pages a number of times or watching a certain length of video, stuff like that. But one of the questions I was going to ask you, Maria, on this was your experience with bureaus. As a speaker, when I go and speak, I'll often be the keynote speaker at an annual conference, let's say the big annual thing for some company or a public event. And I often think, and it doesn't really work so much for me as an individual speaker, but it's something I can imagine a bureau would be better at doing, is having an automation in place that, let's say, 6 to 7 months after that event, having an auto outreach series or a reminder to the bureau or to the agent to reach out to them to talk to them about their speaker for next year. Is that something that bureaus do, that they have that set up?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have it. You set it up in your CRM system, and you put a task in there to remind yourself. So, you know, if they inquire at this time this year for their event in September this year, you put a reminder a couple of weeks earlier next year to go back to them. And often if it's an annual event, actually they start planning as soon as they finished it.
Got it.
They have a holiday and then they'll be back to you straight away if they're happy, which, you know, usually they are happy. But I had regular customers who would do big client conferences, and they'd do the event, they'd go off on holiday, then come back, right, this is what we're thinking about next. And they've even announced it at that particular conference where they're going to be. So they'll say, this is where we are next. We have to follow that speaker now. And you're constantly raising the game or trying to do something different. Really hard that is, but great fun.
I did wonder, and I've seen it a few times, but it's not a big thing, I don't think, and maybe for good reason, is speaker syndicates, where you'll have 6 to 10 speakers in almost like a private mastermind syndicate, that really what they're doing is they're referring internally. So they're not on competitive topics, but they have maybe kind of related topics. So let's say if I'm doing an event and, you know, 3 months later, or on the debrief call, let's say with the client, I'll say, you know, what is the theme for your event that you're planning next time? They might say that, and say, oh, you might want to think about this person. And I don't have it in a formal way. I don't get anything for that. I just, sometimes I might recommend someone. Is that something that you hear, like in terms of kind of speakers, syndicates kind of coming together to kind of support each other and cross-refer business to each other?
Absolutely. I haven't heard of anybody with a bigger group, but I do know several speakers that there'll be 2 or 3 of them that recommend each other. And it normally happens as soon as you come off stage, actually, that you would say to a client, listen, I now know your audience. I now understand what they're looking for. When you're looking for the next speaker, this is the person you might want to consider. And what's great with the people who do this, I mean, Jamil Qureshi used to do this every time he spoke. He would then say, please just book that particular person through Maria again. Yeah, which was great. So he'd let me know that they were recommended. But you have to be really careful who you do that with, because your reputation lies also on the person you're recommending, and that's why many clients will go to a bureau, because they know that the bureau's reputation is only as good as the last gig that they've done, and they won't work with you as an individual again if you make a bad recommendation. So if you're going to recommend another speaker, be absolutely sure that they're going to deliver and that they're good. You know, so yeah, no, Jamil's brilliant at that, and you know, there are other speakers who do that too, do it very well. Obviously he does it a lot because he's very busy.
Absolutely, that's what you want. You want to be giving, spread the love.
He spreads the love. Yeah, brilliant. Well, so what did you take away from that before we close?
You know, it was actually something I was having a conversation yesterday with a speaker, Marcus Buckingham.
Yes.
who many people will know through he co-created the Strengths Finders, strengths assessment. A great British speaker, but has lived in America for a long time. And we were having this conversation about, it wasn't directed to the sales, but it was talking about going deeper with questions, which is kind of like asking better questions, what we've just spoken about there. And there was that one where Tony was mentioning this idea of like A, B, C's, like who are that client those clients you really enjoy working with and you want to work with more, you can really want to go deep on. And what Marcus was talking to me about yesterday is asking a series of deeper questions on that. Not just who, but where, why, how, when, and you kind of go one level deeper on it. So, it's that classic thing if a coach says to you, well, what do you experience that sense of flow in? What would you lose all track of time? That's probably the thing that you should do. And what Mark's saying is that that's not good enough. You need to go one level step. Okay, maybe you experience joy and that sense of, as a speaker, you love, okay, when, who do you enjoy speaking for? What kind of clients is it? What kind of, where do you want to be an international speaker? Do you just want to speak in Orlando? You just kind of go a couple of steps further, and it adds a little bit of detail. And exactly what Tony was talking about, he knows his customer now. He knows his ideal customers or his ideal industries. So he can go, his sales language, his marketing, it cuts away a lot of noise because you can get super laser focused by doing that.
Brilliant. Great show.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you everyone for watching. And it's bye-bye from me.
And bye-bye from me.
I'll see you later.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.